Today we're talking about a blown out rear end on your car, not that 2 a.m. real bad choice of going to Taco Bell because you had the munchies. What's going on, everybody? Charles. In this video, we're gonna be tearing down a rear differential assembly out of a newer Audi S3. This diff assembly is pretty much the same on the S3, the modern Golf R. This is the 5th generation all-wheel drive using Borg Warner electronics. This system used to be known as Haldex, which I'm sure I'll probably call it several times throughout this video. I've also done a complete teardown on the early generation of the rear differential assembly on Mark IV R32. Now, that looks like a pretty different setup, but it basically functions the same. And this is actually becoming a somewhat common issue on the 4Motion and Quattro transverse cars. The complaint becomes, I only have front wheel drive, and this is often found when adding more power. What will happen is the motor right here will get removed and it's full of metal, meaning that the all-wheel drive clutch system, which is in this side of the house, has failed in some way. Our differential side is here at the back, and I think those generally hold up pretty well. So let's take it apart and see what we can find. I'm also hoping they drain the fluid out of this because I didn't think about that till just right now. I've actually done a video on how to service this Haldex unit, including taking the pump out and cleaning it. If you have one of these, you might want to check that out and get it done. Now, the car that had the failure, the unit got replaced with a used unit from Lifetime Audi. I couldn't find any more on their site specifically, but I did find these units for sale ranging in price from $600 to like $1,700-1,800 bucks. So they're not cheap. New, holy cow, new was like $3,400 bucks, something like that. I think the main diagnosis starts with pulling the motor out and evaluating what's going on. And once enough metal is blown through here, it's kind of done for. Now, I really don't see any metal. What'll happen is in this screen right here, it'll get just caked with metal. They may have tried to salvage it. There's still a good amount of fluid in this. Glurb, 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 glurb. In the fluid, you can see where it looks like it's had metal contamination though. Next up, let's keep going on our clutch side assembly. We'll take the module off here on the side. This has 2 connectors. This one goes to the motor. This one goes to the rest of the car. There actually isn't a ton of stuff available for these from a repair standpoint. Oftentimes shops are left with, hey, just put a new one on, or a used one for that matter. We gotta take this big boy off right here. And I think that one might need a puller in order to come off. We're at taking out the high torque today because I'm not playing around. This part right here is where the prop shaft bolts onto. Maybe we can just persuade this a little bit. We're getting nowhere. Oh, but the whole housing's coming off, so that might be enough. You can see our case is split right here. Oh no, there we go. There we go. Get a little fluid drippage. Oh yeah, there we go. So here is our clutch unit, Borg Warner unit. You see there's a clutch basket right here. They don't really give you any like, here's how you take this apart, so we're gonna just have to wing it here, I think. Now, after dumping that fluid out, I don't know if you can see that, but there is some glitter. Yeah, you can see it up at the top. There's some glitter that was in this oil. Oh yeah, that provided us much more glitter. Glitter, 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 twirl, twirl, twirl. No chunks, but a whole lot of sparklies. So this is basically our all-wheel drive unit. Prop shaft bolts here. The clutches engage and disengage the shaft inside of the diff that I'll show you guys in a couple of minutes. They don't give you any repair instructions because technically, according to Volkswagen, this isn't serviceable anyway, and I'm gonna feel like I probably didn't even need to do that, like it won't even matter. So now here's the seal right around that input shaft. That is a serviceable part. There's also a bearing right here. There's also like a plastic guide and another bearing here. See a needle bearing housing. Then this looks like it just directs oil flow right here. My goal is to find where the heck the metal is from, right? Like, that's what we want to know. Where exactly? I still don't see. So there's a couple of holes here for oil to pass through. You can see our big seal on the main housing. There's one tab on this basket that's pushed in. All right, steel plate, clutch below it. Let's make the ultimate sacrifice. This thing isn't gonna go back together ever, so it's okay. So this is from our input shaft. And then, let's see, we should be like this. So we have thick steel plate, clutch pack. Thick steel plate, clutch. Oh, as we start to get down a little bit, we can begin to see these clutch packs having a bit of wear on them. Or sorry, the steel discs having a bit of wear on them. I'm starting now to get to where the steel discs have metal on them. The friction discs look good, but yeah, we're getting to where like that's a piece of metal, that's a piece of metal, that's a piece of metal. Same thing on the back side, more metal. It's not a lot, but I mean, it's enough to be a problem, right? But it's not what I expected. I expected it to be like mega. So there's a bunch of metal on this one. The clutch packs look good, or the clutches look good. There's a piece of metal embedded in this clutch right there. You can see it, it's embedded in there. So we're getting to like the bottom. These, oh, this one, yeah, so this one here, it's not like the S4 with the clutch packs for the S4, but you can see that one's got some pretty good discoloration on it. This works just like automatic transmissions, just like DSG clutch packs. It's basically the same. You have one fixed piece, this. This is mechanically bolted to the prop shaft in the front. It's splined on the outer part. Then you have these steel discs and friction discs. So I'm gonna do this example with one. The friction disc is splined on the inside. That is now mechanically attached to this input shaft piece right here. So that's attached. The steel disc is splined on the outside. So the steel disc spins freely, right? It'll never lock up with this piece just on its own. Then you have this clutch basket. You'll notice splined on the inside and on the outside too, but the steel disc is mechanically connected to the basket, right? So this is attached to the basket. The friction disc is attached to, we'll call this the input shaft. When you put these together and apply pressure, the friction disc will squeeze into the steel disc and basically lock them together. This means instead of this turning independent from the basket, they all turn as one unit. This is how it can go from front wheel drive to all wheel drive, and how it can control how much rear wheel application we have. So when this and this are locked together based on pressure from the friction discs and steel plates, it essentially makes one long connection from the prop shaft to the differential. And I'm really, man, I was hoping to see a catastrophe of sadness, but I don't. I mean, this is the whole basic unit, more or less. So that's pretty cool. This is very similar to how the early gen Haldexes work, how the DSGs are set up. Let's set that to the side for now. So here is that input shaft into the diff where that clutch basket would spline to. When we rotate this around, this is the reservoir for our clutch fluid. On the older ones like Mark IV, this was a separate piece and was plastic. Now you can see it's all this whole side. The case splits right about here. This is our fill plug for that fluid. This is also where you check the fluid level. Of course, nothing's gonna come out. We need to get these two vent tubes out of the way. I think, oh yeah, we can just turn these up for what? I've never actually had one of these this far apart before. That wasn't normal. We should drain this fluid out too. Let's do that before I get too ahead of myself. This is the diff fluid, and its service plug is right here, and the fill plug is right over here. There we go. Do it the hard way, Charles. That fluid looks good though, yeah? Now, I haven't done a video on how to service the differential fluid on these. That's something that I probably should do. Now I feel better about keeping on. I won't have all this oil dumped all over me. It's sealed with sealant, kind of like a transmission would be. There we go. This is our axle flange for what would be the left axle. There is a seal that is serviceable right here. You would want to mount a slide hammer up and snatch that out with a slide hammer. You can also do that in the car though, so with no way to really hold the transmission. the way we did it was just fine. So here is something that's really important. There are two separate sections to this differential unit. This is going to be the clutch fluid side, right? Here is that reservoir, basically similar to the plastic one they used to have. There's this line, this separator right here, and then this is where our diff lives. So our diff uses different fluid. You need to make sure you're using the right stuff. Looking in here in the Haldex side or the Borg Warner side, there's a little bit of metal, but it's not terrible. It's really not as bad as I thought it would be. But this fluid down here, look at how yucky that is. Yucky, look at how icky it is. Super ick. Nothing really special about it. This is just a normal, plain old open differential like we've had forever. The reason it has that is so the back wheels can freewheel at different speeds. So when you turn a corner, one wheel turns faster than the other. In here, this is where our clutch basket spline to, right? There was a spring clip I went ahead, or circlip that I went ahead and took out. I'm gonna try and snatch on it. Let's see if I can get it out. I don't know if that's gonna come out that way. So let's now see if we can get our diff out. I'm gonna just go through the diff, try and tap the axle out. That was pretty satisfying, wasn't it? So this side is quite a bit longer than the other side because it has to go through the diff. This is how this is actually set up in the car. This one goes here, and our other one that I lost, this one goes here. Here is where that other shaft, let's see if I can get this out. Woo. That was almost scary. Real quick too, here's the open case. There's some magnets to hold the metal. There's not as much metal in here as I thought, you guys. I'm very much certain this all-wheel drive system was not working properly because with that metal in there, those clutches can't clamp. They can't do it. Also, I asked and I don't know how many miles this car had on it. So unfortunately, but this can happen at pretty low miles or pretty high miles. This shaft here is what this basket splines to. I can get it on there, right? Input shaft from prop shaft, clutch basket. Notice this spins. This spins completely independent. When those clutches squeeze together, it locks this to the basket and now rotates this whole thing as one piece. You can see our roller bearings here, and then this goes like this, driving the diff. You can see our spider gears in here. So there you have it. This is how it works. This is the mechanical side of how the all-wheel drive on many, many, many VW Audis and other VAG cars across the world-diverse work. It's actually pretty simple, and it's also kind of complicated because of the way it's controlled. Because it's computer controlled, fluid pressure will be applied and determine like how much this is stuck. When I'm explaining it, I'm kind of saying it's locked, meaning it's either locked together completely or completely freewheeling, and that's not really the case. It can control how much these two, and this is how the computer regulates how much power to the back wheels happens, is the amount of lock or slip for these clutches right in here. And then this just functions like a normal, every plain workaday differential. Nothing really special about this other than it's itty bitty, teeny tiny. For comparison, because I have it literally right here, this is a limited slip for a Mark IV. You can see it's even smaller. Probably goes this way. You can see, it probably went this way. I don't know which way. Where does that leave us? What exactly failed? Where did all the metal come from? I don't know. I don't have a real good answer for that. I'm wondering, is it the pump? Maybe we can let's take the pump apart. Now we're gonna test the pump. That's the ground noise. Oh, I'm nervous. Oh, that's not very, let me turn this off. That's not very exciting, is it? Well, it sure doesn't sound happy. There's fluid coming out, but I'm not getting a bunch of metal out of it. Oh, that definitely just popped the breaker on my power probe. There is also something to consider with why we're not seeing just like a explosion of metal inside of here. This car was diagnosed and repaired, right? This diff came from my buddies over at Apex Tuning, local VW Audi specialty shop. They did the diagnosis. Watch this sploosh fluid all over the place now. So the pump is definitely not good. Now the motor is available separate if you just had a motor die, which is actually really common too. Oh, look at that. That's not good. Yeah, so that that shouldn't be in there. Anybody else have this problem where like the curiosity of what's going on gets you? Then you end up just ridiculous. Okay, that's all. Oh, man. Anybody need some wood stain? I don't recommend this. That's a whole bunch of stuff that we took apart, and unfortunately, kind of bummed we didn't see like a mega catastrophic bit of metal splooged throughout this entire unit. But here's the big takeaway for this. This is a common failure, and the common failure can be something as simple as needing a motor wherever it goes. It can be as much as needing a whole unit because you have these clutch packs are just mad contaminated with metal. So this is where the metal will get. The computer won't work, or it won't mechanically work, it'll slip. And a lot of times you don't get faults for this stuff. You get no warning on your dash, I should say. Though maybe fault stored in the all-wheel drive electronics module, but there will be no warning in the dash for you to go, oh crud, I got a problem that I need to fix. You gotta do your service on these cars. I think it's 3 years, 30K that the services are due. If you have a Tiguan, totally fine. If you have a Tiguan in Alaska and it sees a lot of time of wheel slip, functioning then all-wheel drive, I might consider upping the fuel or upping the service interval to every 20K. If you're tracking your car, much more often, 10K once a year. I know that's a lot, and like the Haldex, the Borg Warner fluid is not cheap, but think about how much not cheap. $2,000 for a used unit, $700 for a used unit, 6 hours of labor, which is generally about $1,000, give or take, depending on where you are, plus an alignment. I would rather spend $50 on doing the service once a year than ever have to worry about that. This is not a rampant problem. This is not water pumps leaking type level of problem, but this is common enough that it's something I wanted you guys to be aware of. And you know I love tearing stuff down like this, and hopefully you enjoyed that. So big thanks to my buddies at Apex Tuning for letting me snatch this, well, what's basically trash rear diff from an S3. I don't know the mileage that car had, but I've seen them happen pretty low miles because I've seen these get replaced under warranty on both the Audi and the Volkswagen side. As always, questions or comments, drop them down below. With that, I'm out. Have an awesome day. I hope you don't have a blown out rear end today, and I'll talk to you again next time. Also, I'm really happy Taco Bell brought the Mexican pizza back. I haven't had one in like 10 years, but I was sad when it went away.